Both of you have represented Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District in Congress. What would you name as your single greatest achievement in the service of the neighbor islands? Ms. Hirono?
I've sought always to listen to my constituents, to work with them, to bring a collaborative style of leadership, because that is what we need. You know, you're not going to be able to get things done for the people of Hawaii without working cooperatively, collaboratively across the aisles, and that's what I've done. And in fact, to me, that kind of approach is the single most important trait that a member of Congress can have. Let me give you some examples. I reached across the aisle, working with Don Young, who's one of the senior Republican members from Alaska, to save Native Hawaiian Alaska Native Education Program on the chopping block. I had to fight my own caucus and turn them around to get this amendment passed. And most recently, we talk about creating jobs. I have a bipartisan bill that I worked with a member from California called the Visit USA bill. And it could create 6,000 more jobs for the state of Hawaii.
Speaks.
Two achievements come to mind. The first I've already talked about. I believe that when I went out throughout my district into the communities that I represented and conducted those talk stories, meetings between you and me, sometimes meetings as large as this room or larger, sometimes just a few folks. And we had a conversation, and I listened, and I shared, and I believe that in the words of my own mentor, Spark Matsunaga, I brought your federal government right to your doorstep. And I believe that those were good for me and for you and for democracy, and I would do them all over again in a heartbeat as your senator. The second thing that comes to mind really has nothing to do with Social Security and Medicare and everything to do with the environment. Because some of the neighbor islands that I represented were the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. In all honesty, when I was elected, I didn't know I represented them, but I found out the first day. As I was flying up, I saw the northwestern Hawaiian Islands and knew they were part of Hawaii. But I asked my staff when I got to D.C., who represents them? They said, you do, Congressman. I thought I better protect them, and I did, working, by the way, on a bipartisan basis with the Republican president.
Okay, let me go to another audience question here. There are thousands of grandparents in Hawaii raising their grandchildren, mostly due to meth addiction. How will you help us? Will you raise the retirement age now that we need all the breaks we can get? Mr. Hirono?
Meth addiction is not just a problem in Hawaii, but in so many other parts of our country, and it's a generational issue. And so I support those efforts that will provide therapy, that will provide the kind of family support that seniors are looking for. And when you think about the thousands of grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, I know what that's like too, because my grandmother raised me when I was a child in Japan, because my father was an abusive parent and my mother had me live with my grandparents. So, you know, these are very difficult problems to solve. And I think that one of the things that Congress attempted to do was literally we passed a law that would make it much tougher to buy just regular kinds of pharmaceuticals that you could get over the counter, but we knew that those were being combined to make meth and the creation of meth labs. So those are the kinds of things that we need to do. And yes, it may inconvenience you that you can't go get, your medication over the counter, but that was the reason that we put in place those kinds of laws. And we need to do more.
Mr. Gates?
Well, I worked a great deal on crystal meth when I was your congressman, because that epidemic was raging even then in the early part of the last decade. And I teamed up with other folks in Congress in the crystal meth caucus to really go after this on an organized basis. And we targeted a couple of different things. First of all, to go after the dealers. Second of all, to do exactly what Maisie just talked about, and that was to go after the availability of the supplies that go into making crystal meth. And I'm happy that the efforts that we started then came to fruition eventually. And third, of course, treatment. Now, a lot of these things came because I got involved in the communities and went out and talked to you about what the challenge was right here in Hawaii. In fact, I brought one of the House subcommittees that was most responsible for drug law and policy nationally, and we did a congressional hearing, a full-on congressional hearing, right here in Kahului on this subject. Then Congressman Mark Sauter and I did that hearing, and we listened to you. We took that back to Washington, and I think it had an effect.
Okay, let me ask you this. We've talked almost an hour now. What are the sharpest differences on issues between you and your opponent? Start with you, Ms. Hirono. What are the sharpest differences between you and your opponent? I mean, some of that has emerged, obviously.
I mean, clearly on issues like Social Security, you know, I asked the question based on my values that this is a program that it's not just a program to be managed, but it's a commitment. So my value is that I'm going to do everything I can in finding those solutions, that those solutions are not going to make life even tougher for those of you who paid into the system and earn the benefits. So I think that the approaches, the questions we ask are very different. And also, another difference is I bring a style of leadership that is collaborative. I don't stand on the sidelines and say I'm independent and not work with my colleagues both in my own caucus and across the aisle. So my record reflects that kind of collaborative style, and when we talk about a broken Washington, you need somebody who can work that way, and I've done it even in this most divided Congress that we've seen in a long, long time.
Mr. Case.
Well, with respect to Maisie, I really don't know what the differences are because she has not been forthcoming with her record and with her agenda. And that's why I've asked for it. I appreciate that some people don't appreciate me saying that. But this is the United States Senate. This is a campaign for one of the most important elections this year in our country, and one of the most important elections for our Hawaii in a generation. And we should stand before you like we are and talk about our agenda, our record, our beliefs. And I just don't know what the differences are. I can tell you that there's certainly a difference in style. I've talked about it before. When I went around out there into the community and did my 172 talk stories, I did that because I wanted to go to where people were and have direct communications. I think that's been a difference between us. We have some differences in terms of our voting record on the economic side of the agenda from what I can see. We are both quite progressive on social issues. I think you have seen here that we both are defenders of Social Security. But as to what those other differences are, I hope we find them out in the next 2 months before you make one of the most important decisions in your voting life.
When you look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., and the ongoing assaults against programs that support seniors, our keiki, women, our working families, and on Social Security, the continuing efforts to privatize Social Security and to change Medicare in a way that is going to put more and more of the burden of healthcare costs on the seniors, you can see what we're up against. I believe in blending the values that we hold with the policy decisions that we make. And in Hawaii, that means a value of protecting and serving our seniors. And that is why I am such a strong fighter for Social Security and Medicare, remaining in the way that you paid into and you expect the benefits of. As your United States Senator, I will work very, very hard to continue to be your champion on these issues. And, you know, when we talk about things like where people stand, I think the people of Hawaii know where I stand. People of Hawaii want to know who they can vote for is the person who stands with them. And I have a record of standing with the people of my district who have voted for me time and again. I'm honored by that, but there's a lot of work to do because there are a lot of challenges. We have to get our economy going. We have to help our families. We have to take care of our kupuna. We have to take care of our keiki. And I'm going to continue to be that champion. I'm going to continue to stand with you. I would be privileged to do that. And I bring to the U.S. Senate an approach that combines my head and heart. And I humbly ask for your support. Mahalo nui loa.
Okay.
Maisie, AARP members, the great folks of Maui, and to those watching us statewide, friends, mahalo. Mahalo for a great hour. I wish we had a little bit more time. We're kind of just getting started there. And if you want to stick around for another hour, I'm happy to do that. I want to thank AARP especially for your incredibly strong advocacy for the seniors of our country, not just today, but tomorrow. We need you in Washington, D.C. We need your strength because these are tough times that require good decisions. And those decisions must be fair decisions. Fair decisions to maintain one of the greatest accomplishments of our country, the social safety net we built in the last several decades, and that we want to continue. One that has served us well. As I said, one that has saved millions of lives, literally saved millions of lives, and lifted whole generations out of poverty. That needs to be preserved, and that's number one. And I pledge to you that as your senator, I will save and preserve Social Security and Medicare. Not just now, not just 10 years from now, but for generations to come. That's how important this is. And yes, to defend it against the attacks that are present in Washington and that will be present in the general election campaign. Because let's make no mistake, the opponent that faces the Democratic nominee in the general election campaign is no friend of Social Security and Medicare or of seniors, and will join the group in Washington, D.C. that wants to dismantle them. But you know, let me close this way. For each Social Security and Medicare out there, as important as there are 10 other issues equally important. And it will take strong and effective leadership in Washington to deal with the challenges of our time. If we can come together and do that, if we can be honest with each other and solve our problems together, we will overcome. And I hope to serve you as your United States Senator as we commit ourselves to doing just that. EdCase.com. Mahalo.
That brings us to the end of today's debate. Thank you, candidates, for your participation. Let's give them a big round of applause. Our thanks also to AARP for sponsoring this debate and keeping Hawaii's people informed on issues vital to our state.